So hey guys, as you know, I get a lot of questions on Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter about business, entrepreneurship, Dragon's Den, and I find it difficult sometimes to reply to all of you on the questions. So I thought it'd be great to get another fellow dragon, Sara Davies, to join in, and we can do a Q&A and answer some of your questions that you'd like to know, and we'll try and get through as many as we can. So we've got Berry Bumble. What a great idea. My question is, how do you handle setbacks and doubt? How do you pick yourself back up? Well, look, being an entrepreneur, you always have setbacks. And it can come right out of the blue. You could have 3 at one time. So it's about looking at the bigger picture, the vision and what you want to achieve. You've got a burning desire, obviously, to get your product or service out there. And that's the end goal. You'll have challenges in your life. You'll have difficulties. You've got to have a positive mindset and mind frame, because it's not just you. It's your team that you're also trying to encourage and motivate to build your business when you get to that stage. So I think always have that strong positive attitude and have the end picture in your mind.
Yeah, I remember I remember going for a really big pitch once, and I thought, how could they possibly say no to this? And they did, and honestly, I literally came home. I was at university still. I laid on the bed and I cried for about 4 hours solid. I felt like I was just a young woman, and I felt like I had all my dreams literally crashed. But I remember getting up the next morning and thinking, do you know what? They missed out on that opportunity. And I just had this renowned sense of, yeah, it was their loss, not mine. And I just completely went at it. And I remember a few weeks later pitching to the same company, something slightly different, and them taking it on board.
Yeah.
And I thought, Craigie, I literally thought a few weeks ago that was the end of my dreams. Yet a few weeks later, it really made me stronger.
Well, there you have it. I think the one interesting thing about setbacks also is that there's a learning experience. And you have to take a learning from what happened back then, what happened at that point in time, because it could teach you something very valuable that you could use later on in future. So the next question. Charlie, do you think it's a good idea to buy an established business rather than start your own business from scratch? Look, I mean, there are a lot of businesses out there that are available. Some of them are doing well. Sometimes the entrepreneur has given up. But if you think it's a really good idea, it's about finding a niche in a market. So even if it's your own business or idea, and you find that nobody else is doing it and you think it's a great one, you should go for it. But also if you think someone else has got a good idea and they're not maximizing it to their potential, you think it could be a lot bigger, then yes, then get in there and see. It's all about adding value, where you can add value to grow this business, because someone else may not see that. So it depends. I wouldn't say there's one rule that's better than the other.
Yeah, I know from my point of view, with the businesses I've been involved in, I've always felt so overwhelmingly passionate about that business, and that business is worth more with me and that passion in it than it would be to someone else. So from that perspective, it's always been better for me to be involved in that business. However, as we've got bigger as a business, mergers and acquisitions are the fastest way for us to grow. And it's about, as you said, seeing opportunities that other people don't have the skills to maximise, but you can see that perhaps, whether it's you, your experience, your network, can maximise it a lot better than they
Sure,
can.
yeah. And with the more experience that you have running your business, you can add that to other people who haven't had that experience as well, and help them. That's what Dragon's Den's about as well.
So this is a great one from Tristan and seems very pertinent. How do you decide in a quick moment whether a business is worth investing? And I guess quite often when we're in the den, we literally do have just a quick moment. How do you decide?
That's an interesting one, and I think you have to be on the ball. So I would say it's probably down to 3 things. One is the product or service. It really has to be appealing or interesting.
Yeah.
The people, so the person behind it, the entrepreneur, have they got what it takes? Are you going to be able to work with them? Have they got the skill sets? And then, of course, I think the other P, I would say, was the potential for the brand and the product and the market. Where do you think you could take this? Is it scalable? Is it something that could be big? Is it, just going to be a massive brand, for instance? So
yeah, I would totally agree. And I know from my perspective, when people have come into pitch, I can usually decide within 5 to 10 minutes if that is a person I want to be involved with. And then if you can get over that hurdle, then I'm putting their business through all the other questions in my head. Do I want to go down that route?
Yeah.
But for me, you've either got it or you haven't. You're either that right person with the passion and the drive, and beyond that, then you can start ticking out of the boxes.
Yeah, I think that's certainly what draws you into it is the person and how they're pitching, they're presenting, and their skill set, really.
Great question. Right, Philip, great question here. How do you structure your day for maximum productivity?
I think that's probably the most talked about thing about managing your time in this world, and there's books and books written about it. But I think it's quite personal to everyone. It's different because everyone has a different life, work-life balance, even a business, the type of business you're running. You might be always on, you might have time to have breaks. But I find, because I'm usually working on many different projects at once, and doing a little bit each day for each one, I find easier because you know where you are. Yep. But in terms of the day, structuring my day, I tend to have non-core business meetings in the morning, and then throughout the day I'll do my main Vitabiotics business and vitamins, and then I'll sort of switch back to non-core stuff towards the end of the day, and that's it. But I'll set goals every night as to what I want to try and get done the next day, just a small list. And in the morning as soon as I wake up, instead of looking at my phone, I'll try and remember what the points are myself, because I want to try and be in control of my own day versus having a device tell me what to do.
That's a great idea, actually. I don't know if you found this, but I found something that really changed me and my approach to my productivity was having kids. And I think before then, a work day for me could be anything up to 16, 18 hours if I would let it. And then all of a sudden, you've got that other drain on your time where you can't just spend endless... I don't want to be leaving the office at 9, 10 o'clock every night, but I can't be any less productive. So I learned to force myself to be as productive in a much shorter work day than I was previously. And honestly, I think it's probably one of the best things that happened to our business. I think it's one of the best things that could have happened to me. And I look now and I probably output 3 times more in a day than I did before I had kids, yet I work far less hours than I did back then. Because about that work-life balance.
Because you could just, being an entrepreneur, you could just keep working and working and working and get carried away. But yeah, that's a good point. Actually.
And I guess the thing for me is, when we were a smaller business, and I felt like I was only answering to myself, quite often it was a case of I would do what excited me the most. Whatever that fresh new idea was that morning, that's what I was working on. Whereas as we've got bigger, and I've got an awful lot of mortgages to pay with the decisions I make on a day-to-day basis, I've learned to put my time and focus on the ideas that drive the greatest commercial return. Yeah. And as an entrepreneur, I found that really difficult discipline to get used to.
It is hard, and sometimes a lot of people say, I'm too busy to do this, I'm too busy to do that. But actually it's about prioritizing what is important, doing what's important versus doing what you really like doing, enjoying. And sometimes you've got to make that sacrifice.
And you see so many people fall foul of that.
Yeah.
Okay, David. David is asking, what is the most outlandish but successful promotion or marketing that you have implemented? And would you say it's better to go bold or play it safe?
So marketing is in my blood, and in terms of all what we do in creating the brand, and many brands that we have is advertising, PR, marketing. So as I've grown as a business, we've stepped it up a lot of the times. But I guess the biggest splurge we ever did, and when sort of quite mainstream, was when we hired our celebrity brand ambassador, David Gandy, for Wellman. And that was a big move for us. It was very expensive, which means not only do you have to pay the brand ambassador, but you have to buy the media, which is very expensive to be able to manage that. Then there are the assets and the videos, and so it all has to be done really professionally. So I think that's where we stepped it up. We invested a lot of money and took that risk, but it paid off. It really put Vitabiotics on the map in terms of a brand. It gave that trust and recognition, and it's always important to find the right brand ambassador, and I think David Gandy really embodied. He actually took the product in his 20s, so it was a genuine, authentic relationship. He loved the product. He loved working with a British company, and I think that was important. And we took that risk, so it turned out okay. And
so would you say that really step changed the way you did marketing in Vitabiotics?
I think, we were quite visible, and we had a lot of awareness. You'd see our products everywhere. But in terms of spending one particular brand, really going all out on it, that sort of put the map for Wellman at a different level. I think brought Vitabiotics to a different level, that sort of thing. But it was after a long time of building the business and the reserves, and to say, okay, let's try it. But yeah, fortunately, it turned out well, and from that, we've done other celebrity brand ambassador partnerships as well, which has worked. Yeah.
So yes, better to go bold than play it safe. I guess one bit of advice that I was given that always stayed with me, when I was first starting up in business, I used to go to a lot of business seminars with marketing ideas, and there was a guy there, Jeff Ram, and he's now flies all over the world. He's a professional marketing speaker, but he was always about delivering lots of little ideas and it was observational marketing, great things he'd noticed, and then you would come away with at least a handful of ideas every show that he did. And I remember going along once, and he was talking to me about a wine company that he'd seen, and he'd gone along to this wine company, and he was joking with them. They had this certain type of wine that no matter what price, what promotion they did it on, they just couldn't sell it. It was just clearly not very good wine. So someone suggested to them they put a sign outside the door saying, "Special offer, whatever it was, wine limited to 3 per customer." And he said from then on, literally, that wine just flew out because everybody thought, well, it must be really good if they're limiting it to 3 bottles each. And it's always stayed with me that. And now, quite often when we're doing promotions within the business, if it's something that we really want to make it look like this is a really awesome special offer, we will literally put on limited to 3 per customer. And you can guarantee people who were on the fence about buying one will always go away with 3.
Well, that's the power of branding and messaging and marketing. It's incredible, right? That's a good example, actually. And I think a similar thing I heard was when you had the TV shopping channels and you had the call-in centers before it was, now it's all online, but you'd have people calling, and then they would, while they're talking about the product, and say, look, call in to get the special offer. They'll say, if the phones are busy, please try again. So that sort of gave the message that people are going to rush to call. Let me get in there quickly. And call and get the product. So
it's kind of a subliminal version of testimonies, testimonials. Because basically what you've got is, I only want to buy a product if loads of people think it's great. And by telling me that the phone lines are busy and lots of people are trying to get this, all of a sudden you feel like you're missing out because it must be brilliant. Yeah. And yes, it's all the tactics that these TV shopping channels use to create business.
Yeah, I mean, you'll know more about that than most,
But it works a treat. Yeah. It absolutely works a treat.
Great.
So, right, let's see what else we've got. Okay, so the Free Range Chalet is asking, we're a small boutique business this summer and realise it's too much for just us. Is there a perfect moment to commit to extra bodies to ease the workload? And would you start with practical or admin help?
That's a good question. Because if you're really busy and you're finding yourself doing a lot of the basic work, if it's simple admin work, I would try and help and get a temp so that you can spend your time, because your time is valuable as an entrepreneur. You've got the ideas, you've got the vision, you want to grow it, make the partnerships. So I think it's important to spend your time as productively as possible to grow the business. And if you can, maybe hire a temp in to do the basic work that you need to get done. I mean, if money's very tight, then it may be difficult, but if you can, try and get help to do it.
I guess it's about thinking of outside the box ways. I started my business when I was at university, and there was just me, and I couldn't afford to pay anybody else to do anything, and so I needed a website. And I did a management degree, so I went and spoke to one of my tutors who lectured in the IT department. And I said to him, I need you to advise me on a web design course I can go on, because I need to go and learn web design so I can build my own website. And he said to me, I'm going to give you a bit of advice and I hope it stays with you. And it really has stayed with me my whole career. He said, do the things that you're good at and hire people to do the stuff that you're not good at. And I said, well, I can't afford to pay a web design company to do my website. He said, no, you can't, Sarah, but there are so many other students around here who are really good at web design. And I ended up paying a kid in the year below me at university 200 quid to build me a website. Now, if I think of the weeks and weeks and weeks I would have gone on that course, to night classes, had to learn that, to develop a website, which was nowhere near as good as what that lad would have been able to do for me. But it never occurred to me to think outside the box. In my head, I was having to go to an expensive agency or do it myself. And there's always an in-between. And I've always stuck to that idea of, if I focus on the stuff that I'm good at and then look at what's the best way to deliver what I'm not good at.
Yeah, I think that's a very important message. Always stick to stuff that you know. and try and get help in other ways that you can. I mean, it could be a family member, it could be, as you say, going to a student. It doesn't have to be amazing the first time it comes up, but you want to get on there, you want to be able to start your business and start rolling, and then when it makes money, start hiring the right people that you can.
Yeah. Right, we've got a one here from Tanya Madden. I would be interested in advice about patents. We've just got our prototype back, so we'll be soon going to see a patent lawyer. If you could give advice on next steps, including manufacturing in the UK or abroad.
That's interesting. I mean, patents, you're quite well versed with patents. Maybe you should answer this one.
So the thing with patents, and what I think a lot of people don't realise, is you have to have an idea, and then you have to have what's called a patentable step. So what you have to have within that is, it can't just be obvious for someone to work out what you do. You have to have come up with a unique and different way of doing something. That's the patentable step. If you've got an idea that's got a patentable step in it, then you are eligible to apply for a patent. The next stage is to work out, does someone else already have a patent, or is there other forms of, there's many ways to skin a cat. Are there other ways out there that have been done? So the next stage is always your patent search. So people go through, and you can either pay a professional to do this, or you can spend hours and hours on the patent website working out what are the other ways of doing this. So if you take my product as an example, I designed, developed and patented a product called the Enveloper, which was a tool for making handmade envelopes. Now, it wasn't a natural thing to go from a piece of paper to a folded envelope, so there was a patentable step in there. Then what I had to do was look at every other form of making an envelope. So there's machines to do it professionally, there's templates you can draw around. All of these are both patented, there's some patents out there, but also there are examples of where people have just worked out how to do it and not patented it. So you need to look at all the other ways and make sure what you're doing is completely unique. If it is, then you can go and apply for a patent. Now, Tanya, I hope you're at a great stage in here. We've had this in the den where we've had people come and pitch us a product. It seems brilliant. And then we'll say, okay, what about the patent? And they say, yes, I'm going to apply for a patent now. Well, you can't actually do that. And a lot of people don't realise this. You need to apply for a patent while nobody else knows about the product. As soon as the product is out there in the public domain, and whether that's you've presented it on Dragon's Den, or you've shown it at a trade show, or you've shown other people, as soon as you've done that, you've removed the ability to be able to patent that product. You must do it before the information's out in the public domain. But it's actually very inexpensive to apply for a patent. So you can apply for that patent and then show people within the public domain, because your patent on record has been applied for. And
I think that's an interesting point, because a lot of people think that you can spend £50,000-£20,000 on patents and trademarks, but actually, firstly, registering a trademark can be done very simply online.
It's a few £100.
And a patent. So what are the cost processes of patents?
So to actually put a patent in, I mean, when I did it, you're talking 15 years ago now, it was £500. £500 to apply for your patent. But that gives me the status of patent pending, which means I can now go and show other people, whether it's at trade shows, whether it would be to appear in Dragon's Den or something, show people that product, knowing that I have the protection of the patent. Now, you've got that for 12 months. At the 12-month mark, you must decide, am I fully fledged going to apply for the patent, and in what territories? That's when it starts getting expensive. So that's when you've got to decide, these are the countries and this is the patent protection I'm going to go for, and you can actually apply for your patent. You can't litigate against the patent. So I had this, someone tried to copy my enveloper idea before my patent had been granted. Now, I can't litigate against that person until I've got my patent granted, but then I can speed up the process to then be able to litigate and actually enforce the patent. But my protection is backdated to the date that I applied for that patent, which is called your filing date.
Right, so technically they can copy your product until you get your patent.
Yes, but then you can go and sue them retrospectively for all the profit
penalties
they've made
and whatever, and losses based on that.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, in terms of the £500 that you paid to get your patent registered, that was an official filing fee, or that was paying a lawyer? Because sometimes lawyers can charge you a significant amount to file for you.
That was my official filing fee.
Yeah.
Now, at this stage, I did my first patent application pretty much on my own with a little bit of support from Business Link, as it was at the time. Now, I remember when I got to that 12-month stage, the business was a bit more established. I knew that there was demand for that product. I'd been making it and selling it. So I had money to then invest in a proper patent attorney to help me write a better version. And I've just had this with one of my Dragon's Den investments. They'd done a great job of getting to where they'd got to. They had that protection without having spent a small fortune. But to do a really good job of getting to the next stage, we've paid our patent attorney and we've we've spent less than 5,000 on additional support, but to take that from just the a rough drawing right through to technical drawings, really strong claims, a really strong well-rounded document.
And of course the patent gets more expensive the more countries you try and register it in, basically. Sorry, we've got a few questions for you from social media, and let's start with the first one. Mary Barragan, I've just started my first ever new business venture. If you were starting your business again, what's the most valuable piece of advice you could share?
So the most valuable piece of advice I was ever given in business is to focus on the stuff that I'm good at and let other people do the bits that they are good at. And it's really stayed with me all the way through. And I think I've made some really good hires over the past 14 years. And I'm not frightened to surround myself with people who are better than me in a lot of areas. And that's where a lot of entrepreneurs fall down. They think they're fantastic at everything. I'm not. I know the bits I'm great at, and I know the skills I'm lacking in, and I'm really good at surrounding myself with great people to do that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. In fact, one of my things is that, focus on your niche and don't try and be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
Even in terms of the product that you have, there's no point getting to a mass market. You're better off being really good at one thing and doing it better than everybody else, and having a smaller market, but having a more engaged and more loyal market.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is from Ruth Manor. What were some of your major hurdles to overcome in the first year of running your business? How do you manage home and work life when so much time was required to keep your business going?
Two very different questions there. If I just focus on that last one, managing home and work life, I absolutely couldn't do it without a phenomenal support network on both sides. So if I just look at home, we're really lucky that we've got both sets of grandparents nearby, because you know what it's like with two small children. They have a busier social life than we do, by the time it's school and friends and everything that needs organising. And I try and apply some of my business principles to organising my home life, which doesn't quite go down too well when you can't treat grandparents like you would do staff. So in terms of the home life, that's how I manage the home life. And then with work, it's just about being really super organised, being very efficient with my time. I have a very, very effective PA who's really good at learning to say no. I really struggle to say no to people, and I end up in meetings I don't need to be in. And she's become a really good gatekeeper to all of that.
And so what would you say some of your major hurdles were that you had to overcome when you started your business?
When I first started the business, so I was still at university, and the university were very, very reluctant to support me in setting up the business. In their eyes, they couldn't understand why I wouldn't just wait till I'd graduated and then start the business. So I found that I was having to keep up my work studies as well as run the beginning of the business. There was one tutor who was very supportive of me in doing that, but everybody else was really dismissive of it. And I think because I've always been a minority in everything I did. I was trying to run a business when I should have been studying, and then I'm female, I'm younger, I'm from the northeast, I'm working in a manufacturing sector which is dominated by men. There is a lot of areas whereby I've always been a bit of an underdog to that, and I've always had to work a little bit harder to overcome whatever it was. But I've actually found that over the years that's just made me an awful lot stronger, and it makes the reward all the greater when you do get there.
This is from collectorsbuddy.org UK. Have you achieved your childhood dreams, or have you yet to achieve them?
If someone had told me as a child that by the age of 35 I would be a dragon sitting in a room with another dragon with a successful business under my belt, I would never have believed them. I would never have even aspired to something at that level. So I think it's fair to say I probably achieved all my childhood dreams years and years ago, and now I'm just riding the crest of that wave. How about you? So
I guess what you're saying is that as you get more successful and you grow, your goals and your dreams get bigger.
Yeah.
Because of reality. So what have I? Well, yeah, my dream is to be a dragon, and I have. No, I'm kidding.
A fire-breathing one, I hope.
I guess, as a kid, I wanted to do many different things. I wanted to be a musician. You want to be a pilot, you want to be a doctor or a scientist. But I think the part that I've taken in terms of healthcare and nutrition is something I've always been interested in medicine. So I was very close to becoming a doctor at one point, actually. And so for me, I guess the level of success that has come from it, again, I don't think I would have imagined it, but I did know that I wanted to do something that would make a difference and that would, eventually be big one day, but I didn't know what it was.
And what's the dream you're still wanting to achieve?
I think, with my business, I believe there's so much more that can be done in terms of helping people in their health and their lifestyle and improve. And today, more and more people are more stressed, and they're having mental issues, dealing with so much of information, whether it's social media or the hectic work life they've got, that the right nutrition support can actually help change your life for the better, and not having to rely so much on medical drugs and products, those type of areas, allopathic medicines. So I think, and I've seen the difference that it makes people taking our products in terms of their life, and the more people that can have that internationally, worldwide, I think the better. So it's on a mission to try and drive and build this as much as I can, really. What would your employees and colleagues say about you?
Oh, I would hope that my staff would say that I was firm but fair. They would probably all say I was a little bit soft. I do know that's probably, I would say, a failing, but I think in a lot of ways it does endear me to a lot of the staff. And I'm very, very fiercely loyal and protective of those staff. I'm very proud of them. But it's got to be a two-way street. So a lot of the staff that I've had have been with me on the whole journey. And I think it's that close bond and friendship I have that it goes way beyond just a staff relationship and into something much deeper. And I think you'll find this: people who work in owner managed businesses have a different motivation in their work than people who just go to work for corporate, because they can see the impact they're having, and they are appreciated by the people at the top, as opposed to it just being a big corporation that molds what they do. It's
true. Otherwise, you've got layers and layers and layers, and you really get filtered down by the time, and you feel like you're a small unit in a massive piece of machinery. But I think that's important, and if you've got staff and employees who are dedicated, following the mission, they'll go with you to wherever you want to take the business, and believe in you, and that's important. That's
I've always found it's really important to share the vision of where you are going with the staff and let them see the role they play in it, and the true impact. I'm a firm believer, and I don't want them just to feel like they're a little cog in a big machine. I want them to be able to see and understand the impact they have on the whole wider business, and I think that in and of itself is incredibly motivational.
Yeah, I think there's three things essentially, isn't it? It's where you want to take the business, to show them where you want to take it, the whole vision, the picture, why you want to get there, right? And essentially what's going to happen when you reach that point. So they have a clear idea of the whole stage of what they're doing, why they're doing it, where they're going to go. And that really helps them get more motivated, enthusiastic about the mission. So what advice do you have for a mum who wants to do something and be able to have flexibility around raising a child?
Do you know, I find it really challenging. I have a lot of women come and speak to me and say, I've just had a baby and I'm not wanting to go back to work, and I see that you've got this fantastic business that fits around your home life, and I'd like to do that. And I think actually that's not what I have. I don't have a business that fits around my home life. I've got a home life that has to fit around my business. And perhaps people see the exciting side of it, of yes, if I want to leave work at 2:30 and do the school run, I can absolutely do that. But they don't see the days and days I have to do away from my family when I perhaps wouldn't choose to do that. So I think the first bit of advice I can give is absolutely go into it with your eyes open. Make sure you understand the commitment that's needed. You know, I'm really lucky in that I had the gumption to go and start the business when I was very young, when I didn't have any dependents, I didn't have a mortgage to pay, I didn't have a family to keep. You know, everything I did could be about me, and I always had in the back of my mind, if it all goes wrong, I just move back home with my mum and dad. You know, I had that security blanket. A lot of people starting businesses don't have that security blanket, and for some people it's that stops them having that security blanket. So I would say to any young mums wanting to have a career change and perhaps have a small business, instead of going back to work in the traditional way that they were doing, really have your eyes open to what that's going to entail, and are you ready for what that entails, and the work that comes with it, and perhaps the sacrifices you're going to have to make, as well as the potential wins that you can have.
It's tough, and you know, my wife is at a stage where she's setting up her own business. We've got kids, and it's a struggle to be able to balance it and do it, because you want to spend time with the kids, you want to spend time on your business, and it just sort of squeezes you both ways. And it's something that you just have to try and figure out in your own situation how to do best in both. And as a mum, I'm sure, it'll happen and you'll figure it out. But
what I do see a lot of now, though, which I think is really heartwarming, especially in my industry where people do craft, is where they've turned their craft hobby into a small business, and it's platforms like Etsy and Pinterest and going to craft fairs that have enabled people, whether it's, I've seen women who've maybe done cupcake decorating as a hobby and managed to make it into a small business, or they've been making cards or doing quilts, turning baby blankets into quilts. You see so many of these little businesses on Etsy and on Instagram these days, and I think for other people to support them makes such a difference.
Yeah.
And you can see how people can have a great, even if your just aspiration is to have a small business, and your own level of income, as opposed to having to go back to work.
Well, if you can work from home, it's even better as a mum, right? Because you can be there when the kids are there and do your work and manage it that way. But yeah, the internet has been a great enabler for people to set up their own businesses. And I keep saying there's no better time in history to set your business up than today, because it's less friction than it was before. And I guess the other point you touched on was that in university, you certainly went for it. And I think at that time is the best time to try and experiment and do as much as you can and fail and, learn and not play it safe. Really,
yes, absolutely.
At the university time, and people ask, should you go to university? Should you not go to university? That's another interesting question as well. Should you start a business? But I mean, you've got your views. My personal view is that I think people should go to university because there's a lot that you can learn from there, unless you've got a burning desire to do something that you believe this is what you're meant to do and you've got an idea and a product to do it. But otherwise, it's always good to go to university. You have an experience of university life, you learn a lot, and after that it gives you a good platform as a base or a degree to later on have a fallback.
Yeah, I think there's two sets of learning that goes on those years you're at university. There's the technical learning, the education side of what you're physically learning in whatever you study, but there's also the life learning skills, and that you can't underestimate how important they are. I certainly felt that I've used a lot of my learnings in my business application as we've developed the business. There's absolutely no substitute for the University of Life, but I just think it gave me the right grounding that I needed, and also the inner confidence to go and really go for starting my own business.
Yeah. So here's one from my VIP card. When is the right time to take on an investor, and how do you know they are the right one?
That's a really good question. Very pertinent, I guess, for us, people looking at us for investors. I actually, I got invited to go and pitch on Dragon's Den right when the show very first started. That's right. And I wanted to, and actually I wasn't right for the show at the time. Interestingly, I didn't need the money investment, but I was quite keen to have an investor on board. And I think what I was really looking for at that time probably wasn't an investor, but a mentor. I had the money to invest in the business, actually not because I had money on the side, but the business was very successful from the off. So I had my own cash flow to fund the growth of the business. But I always felt like I wanted someone to put that arm around me and go on the journey with me. And I think to me, a lot of people that we get coming in the den, yes, they're asking us for money, but what they need more than anything is the support, advice, guidance that we can offer.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think it's really important. There's never a right or a wrong time at all, but you've got to ask yourself, what are you looking for? Yeah. Because really, the money you're asking for is a tiny part of the package of what an investor can bring to a business.
Right, because sometimes having a high valuation isn't necessarily better than having the right investor on board with the right skill set, the networking that they can bring, and the value they can add, essentially. Molly Rose Drinks. Our CEO is 9 and has a successful small business. How can she take her business to the next level and be taken seriously?
So she's 9 and a woman. Wow. I really empathise with that. I thought I started young.
That's a young entrepreneur for you.
So my advice to Molly would be self-confidence. Get rid of all the self-doubt. If you are the CEO of a business at 9 years old, you've clearly done something right. You've clearly got a great product, great drive, and maybe a great support network around you. You've got to have that self-belief and go and push forward. I think I felt exactly probably as Molly does at 21 when I started my business. I felt like I was probably too young. I didn't have the experience I needed. And it's not until I've kind of got into my 30s that I've really started to have the self-belief that I probably should have had all the way through my 20s. So let's hope it doesn't take Molly to her 20s. She can get it in her teen years.
Absolutely. And today, some of the biggest companies in the world are created by young people. So that was the last question and brings us to the end of our Q&A session today. I hope that was useful and it was some good information and tips on entrepreneurship and businesses. Do let us know what you thought about it, and hope to see you soon.
Yeah, and you know, it's been really enjoyable answering your questions. And if you've got any more questions, don't wait till we next ask. You can always drop us a comment on Twitter or on Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn. Let us know your questions. And when we've got enough of them, we'll come and do this again.
Absolutely.